What happens when one of Hollywood's most respected actors gets pushed too far by a host who thinks fame gives her the right to say whatever she wants? In just 36 seconds, Jennifer Hudson went from talk show queen to public enemy number one. And what Denzel Washington did next left everyone in that studio absolutely speechless. Before we get into this, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now because we're pulling back the curtain on Hollywood's dark side, exposing entitled celebrities and their shocking behavior the cameras never showed you. We've got the raw footage they don't want you to see, and you won't want to miss a single reveal. Drop a comment below and let us know what you think about this outrageous behavior. Now, let's get into what really happened. The studio lights were hot that afternoon. Denzel Washington walked onto the set of The Jennifer Hudson Show like he'd done 1,000 talk shows before. Calm, collected, legendary. The audience clapped and cheered as he took his seat across from Jennifer. She was smiling that big celebrity smile, the one that looks perfect for the cameras but doesn't quite reach the eyes. "Denzel Washington, everybody," Jennifer said, gesturing toward him like he was a prize on a game show. The audience kept clapping. Denzel nodded politely, settling into the chair. He's always been gracious, always professional. That's why people love him. But what Jennifer was about to do would test every ounce of that grace. "So Denzel," she started, leaning forward with that fake concerned look hosts love to use, "I've been dying to ask you something. A lot of people have been talking about your last movie. Some critics said it wasn't your best work. How does it feel knowing you might be past your prime?" The audience went quiet. You could feel the tension immediately. Denzel's face didn't change much, but if you look closely, you could see his jaw tighten just a little bit. He took a breath, clearly choosing his words carefully. "Well, Jennifer," he said, keeping his voice steady, "I've been doing this for over 40 years. Every project isn't going to be perfect, but I put my heart into every role. That's all any actor can do." It was a perfect answer. Humble, honest, classy. Most hosts would have moved on, maybe complimented his dedication, but not Jennifer. She had something else in mind. Right, she said, waving her hand like she was swatting away his response. "But let's be real here. You've made some questionable choices lately. I mean, some people are wondering if you're just taking roles for the paycheck now. Are you?" The audience gasped. You don't ask Denzel Washington if he's selling out. You just don't. But Jennifer wasn't done. She had this smirk on her face, like she thought she was being edgy, like this was good television. Denzel shifted in his seat, and you could see he was trying really hard to stay calm. "I choose roles that speak to me," he said, his voice a little firmer now. "I've never chased money. I chase stories that matter, characters that challenge me. If you've been paying attention to my career, you'd know that." That last part, "if you've been paying attention," that was Denzel's polite way of saying Jennifer had no idea what she was talking about. But she didn't catch the hint. Or maybe she did and just didn't care. "Oh, I've been paying attention," Jennifer shot back, crossing her arms. "And what I've been seeing is someone who used to be great but now seems like he's just coasting. I mean, when was the last time you really impressed anybody?" The studio went dead silent. Even the crew members looked uncomfortable. One of the cameramen actually looked away. Denzel stared at Jennifer for a long moment, and you could see something change in his eyes. The respect was gone. The patience was gone. "Jennifer," he said slowly, "I came here today as a guest on your show. I didn't come here to be disrespected. I've earned my place in this industry through hard work, dedication, and talent. I don't need to justify my career to you or anyone else." But Jennifer wouldn't let it go. She actually laughed, like this was all some kind of joke. "Oh, come on, don't be so sensitive," she said, still smiling that fake smile. "I'm just asking the questions everyone's thinking. Isn't that what good interviewers do? Or do you only like softball questions? Maybe that's the problem. Maybe you've been treated like royalty for so long, you forgot what real criticism feels like." That was it. That was the moment. Denzel's face went completely blank. He didn't yell. He didn't curse. He just slowly stood up from his chair. The audience didn't know whether to gasp or stay quiet. Jennifer's smile finally started to fade. "What are you doing?" she asked, trying to sound casual, but you could hear the nervousness creeping into her voice. "I'm leaving," Denzel said simply. He started unhooking the microphone from his shirt. "I've been in this business long enough to know when someone is trying to tear me down for ratings. I don't need this. I don't need you." Jennifer stood up too, trying to salvage whatever was left of the interview. "Denzel, come on, sit back down. We're just having a conversation," she said, But her voice was getting higher, more desperate. Don't be dramatic. Dramatic? Denzel stopped and looked right at her. You invite me onto your show, you disrespect my work, you question my integrity, and you call me dramatic for walking away? That says a lot more about you than it does about me. The audience was frozen. Nobody knew what to do. Some people had their phones out, recording everything. Jennifer's producers were probably having a meltdown in the control room. Jennifer herself looked like she was starting to panic. I was just doing my job, she said weakly, asking tough questions. No, Denzel said, his voice cutting through the studio like a knife. Tough questions are fine. I've answered tough questions my whole career. What you're doing is different. You're trying to humiliate me. You're trying to make yourself look clever at my expense. That's not journalism. That's not entertainment. That's just mean. Jennifer tried to laugh it off, but it came out all wrong. You're overreacting, she said. I think you're taking this way too personally. Denzel shook his head slowly. You know what the sad part is? He said. You're talented. You can sing. You can act. You have your own show. But instead of using your platform to lift people up, you're using it to tear them down. That's a choice you're making, and it's a bad one. He handed his microphone to one of the stagehands and started walking toward the exit. Jennifer followed him a few steps, her heels clicking on the floor. Denzel, please, she called out. Can we start over? We can edit this part out. He stopped at the edge of the stage and turned around one last time. Edit it out? He repeated. So you can pretend this never happened? So you can keep treating your guests like this behind closed doors? No. I hope you leave every second of this in. I hope people see exactly who you are. And with that, he walked off, just left. The greatest living actor in Hollywood walked off a talk show because the host couldn't show him basic respect. The audience sat there in complete shock. Some people were whispering to each other. A few were still recording on their phones. Jennifer stood there in the middle of her own stage, looking lost. We're gonna take a quick break, she finally said to the cameras, but her voice was shaking. You could see her hands trembling. One of her producers rushed onto the stage to talk to her, and she just kept shaking her head like she couldn't believe what had just happened. But here's the thing, it did happen. And it happened because Jennifer Hudson thought she could get away with treating a legend like garbage for entertainment. She thought Denzel would just sit there and take it, because that's what guests are supposed to do, right? Smile through the insults, laugh at the put-downs, play along with the games. But Denzel Washington isn't just any guest. He's someone who spent decades earning respect through his craft. He's played heroes and villains, cops and criminals, historical figures and everyday people. He's won Oscars. He's inspired millions. And he wasn't about to let someone diminish all of that just to make her show more buzzworthy. The worst part is how Jennifer handled it. She could have apologized. She could have admitted she crossed a line. Instead, she got defensive. She tried to make it seem like Denzel was being too sensitive, like he couldn't handle a little criticism. That's the move of someone who knows they messed up but is too proud to admit it. Let's talk about what she said to him. Past your prime. Those were her words. Imagine telling someone who's still actively working, still choosing meaningful projects, still showing up and giving incredible performances, that they're washed up. That's not a tough question. That's disrespect wrapped in a question mark. And then she doubled down. Questionable choices, taking roles for the paycheck, just coasting. Every sentence was another dig, another little knife trying to cut him down. And for what? For ratings? For clicks? For the chance to say she asked Denzel Washington the hard questions? But the really telling moment was when she said he'd been treated like royalty for so long that he forgot what criticism feels like. That right there shows you what Jennifer's mindset was. She thought because Denzel is successful, because he's respected, because he's accomplished, that he deserves to be knocked down a peg. Like success is something to punish instead of celebrate. That's the mentality of someone who's insecure about their own place in the industry. Jennifer has her own success. She's got the singing career, the acting roles, the talk show. But instead of being confident in that, instead of using her position to have real conversations with her guests, she tried to make herself look bigger by making Denzel look smaller. And it backfired, spectacularly. Because when Denzel walked off that stage, he didn't look weak. He didn't look sensitive. He looked like a man who knows his worth and refuses to let anyone treat him as less than he is. That's not dramatic. That's self-respect. That's dignity. Jennifer, on the other hand, looked exactly like what she is. Entitled, thoughtless. So caught up in trying to create a moment that she forgot there's a human being sitting across from her. A human being with feelings, with a legacy, with a life's work that deserves respect. The audience knew it too. You could see it on their faces. They weren't on Jennifer's side. They weren't thinking Denzel overreacted. They were thinking, why is she treating him like this? They were uncomfortable because they knew they were watching something ugly, something that shouldn't be happening. And when Jennifer tried to save face by asking him to start over, by suggesting they could edit it out, that just made it worse. Because that's admitting she knew it was wrong. She knew she'd crossed a line. But she was only sorry because he was leaving, not because she'd hurt him. She was sorry about the consequences, not the actions. Denzel saw right through that. That's why he told her to keep it all in. Because he knew that if she edited it out, she'd just do the same thing to the next guest, and the next one, and the next one. The only way to stop that behavior is to expose it, to let people see what really happens when the cameras are rolling and a host thinks they can get away with anything. This is what happens when celebrities forget where they came from. Jennifer Hudson came up as a singer, then an actress. She knows how hard this industry is. She knows what it feels like to be judged, to be criticized, to have people doubt you. So why would she do that to someone else? Why would she use her platform to make someone else feel small? Because somewhere along the way, she started believing her own hype. She started thinking that having a talk show meant she had the right to say whatever she wanted to whoever she wanted. She forgot that with a platform comes responsibility. She forgot that her words have weight. Denzel didn't forget, though. He's carried himself with grace and dignity for 4 decades. He's given back to his community. He's mentored young actors. He's used his success to open doors for others. And when someone tried to tear him down, he didn't fight back with insults or anger. He just removed himself from the situation. That's power. That's real power. Not the fake power of having a microphone in a studio audience. The power of knowing when to walk away. The power of refusing to participate in your own disrespect. Jennifer thought she was in control of that interview. She thought she was steering the conversation, pushing boundaries, being edgy. But the moment Denzel stood up, she lost all control. She became the story, but not in the way she wanted. She became the cautionary tale, the example of what not to do. Think about what was going through her head when he started walking away. The panic, the realization that this was going to be everywhere, that people weren't going to remember the interview for any clever questions or interesting insights. They were going to remember it as the time she disrespected Denzel Washington so badly that he walked off her show. And she deserves that. She earned that because she had a choice in every moment of that interview. She could have been kind. She could have been respectful. She could have asked about his process, his inspirations, his upcoming projects. She could have had a real conversation with one of the greatest actors alive. Instead, she chose cruelty. She chose to belittle him. She chose to treat him like he was lucky to be there, like she was doing him a favor by having him on her show. The arrogance of that, the sheer audacity. And when he called her out on it, when he named exactly what she was doing, she couldn't handle it. She fell apart. Because deep down, she knew he was right. She knew she was wrong. But admitting that would mean admitting she's not the person she pretends to be on camera. The saddest part is that Jennifer had an opportunity. She had Denzel Washington, a living legend, sitting right there. She could have learned from him. She could have asked him about his journey, his struggles, his triumphs. She could have given her audience something valuable, something inspiring. But she wasted it. She threw it away for what? For a few shock value moments that she thought would go viral? Well, they went viral all right. Just not in the way she hoped. This whole situation is a perfect example of what's wrong with celebrity culture right now. There's this idea that famous people owe us something. That because they're successful, we get to tear them apart. That humbling them or bringing them down is somehow entertaining. But it's not. It's just mean. And when someone like Denzel Washington, who's been nothing but professional and gracious his entire career, finally says enough, we should be listening. We should be examining why we thought this kind of treatment was acceptable in the first place. Jennifer Hudson created this situation. She walked into that studio thinking she was going to have a memorable interview, and she was right. But it's memorable for all the wrong reasons. It's memorable because it shows what happens when ego overrides empathy, when the desire for attention overrides basic human decency. Denzel didn't storm off in a rage. He didn't yell or cause a scene. He simply refused to stay in a situation where he wasn't being respected. That's the difference between someone who's secure in who they are and someone who's still trying to prove something. Jennifer is still trying to prove she belongs. Denzel already knows he does. And that's why when she attacked him, it didn't make him look weak. It made her look desperate. The audience reaction tells you everything you need to know. They weren't cheering when Denzel left. They weren't on Jennifer's side. They were uncomfortable. They were embarrassed for her because they recognized what was happening. They saw someone they admire being mistreated, and they didn't like it. That's the thing about respect. You can't demand it. You can't bully people into giving it to you. You earn it through your actions, through how you treat others, through the choices you make when you think nobody's watching. Denzel has earned respect over and over again throughout his career. Jennifer lost it in one interview. And here's what Jennifer doesn't understand. Denzel walking off didn't hurt him. It hurt her. He's still Denzel Washington. He's still got his legacy, his body of work, his reputation. If anything, people respect him more now for standing up for himself, for showing that even at his level of success, he won't tolerate disrespect. Jennifer, though, she's the host who chased away one of Hollywood's biggest stars. She's the person who was so rude that Denzel Washington, the most professional man in the business, couldn't even finish the interview. That's going to follow her. That's going to change how future guests see her. Why would anyone want to sit down with her knowing this is how she treats people? The producers must have been losing their minds. Imagine trying to book guests after this. Imagine calling up publicists and managers and trying to convince them to put their clients on the show. Sure, she disrespected Denzel Washington, but your client will be fine. Good luck with that. This is what happens when you forget that talk shows are supposed to be conversations, not confrontations. Yes, you can ask challenging questions. Yes, you can dig deeper than surface level, but there's a way to do that with respect. There's a way to push without being pushy. There's a way to challenge without being cruel. Jennifer doesn't know how to do that, or maybe she does and just chose not to. Either way, it cost her. It cost her credibility. It cost her respect. It cost her the interview of a lifetime, because that's what she threw away. She had Denzel Washington right there, willing to talk, willing to share. And instead of making the most of it, she made a mess of it. She turned what could have been a highlight of her career into the lowest point. Think about the contrast between them in that moment. Denzel, calm and composed even as he's being attacked. Jennifer, desperate and flailing when her guest refuses to play along. That's the difference between class and chaos. When Denzel said, "That says a lot more about you than it does about me," he was absolutely right. Every insult she threw at him reflected back on her. Every dismissive comment showed her character, not his. She thought she was exposing him, but she was really exposing herself. And the thing is, this could have been avoided so easily. All she had to do was show basic respect. That's it. That's the baseline for human interaction. You don't have to worship your guests. You don't have to agree with everything they say, but you have to treat them with dignity. Jennifer couldn't even do that, and now everyone knows it. Now everyone sees who she really is when the lights are on and the cameras are rolling. Someone who values shock over substance. Someone who thinks cutting people down is the same as building yourself up. Denzel tried to warn her. He gave her chances to course correct. He answered her questions even when they were rude. He stayed professional even when she wasn't. But there's only so much anyone can take. There's only so many times you can be insulted before you decide you don't have to sit there and take it anymore. And when that moment came, Denzel handled it perfectly. No drama, no yelling, just a clear statement of his boundaries and a decision to enforce them. That's maturity. That's wisdom. That's what 4 decades in Hollywood teaches you. How to recognize when a situation isn't worth your energy and how to remove yourself with dignity intact. Jennifer could learn from that, but she probably won't, because learning from it would require admitting she was wrong. And people who behave the way she did rarely have that kind of self-awareness. They're too busy blaming everyone else, too busy making excuses, too busy convincing themselves that they were just doing their job. But the truth is simple. She wasn't doing her job. Her job was to host a talk show, to have interesting conversations, to make her guests feel welcome. She failed at all 3. She turned what should have been an easy interview into a disaster, and she did it all by herself. Nobody made her ask those questions. Nobody forced her to be disrespectful. Those were her choices. And now she has to live with the consequences. The clips that are going around, the criticism, the loss of reputation, all of it is her doing. Meanwhile, Denzel goes on being Denzel, respected, admired, successful, because he knows who he is, he knows what he's worth, and he refuses to let anyone, not even a talk show host trying to make a name for herself, tell him different. That's the real lesson here. Know your worth. Respect yourself enough to walk away from situations that don't serve you. Don't sit there and take abuse just because someone has a platform. Your dignity is more important than their ratings. Jennifer thought she had all the power in that studio. She had the set, the audience, the cameras, the control room. But power isn't about any of those things. Power is about knowing when to use your voice and when to use your feet. Denzel used his feet. He walked away, and in doing so, he showed everyone watching what real strength looks like. Not aggression, not retaliation, just the simple act of saying, "I deserve better than this," and meaning it. That's the story. That's what really happened when Denzel Washington walked off the Jennifer Hudson show. It wasn't about him being difficult or dramatic. It was about him refusing to be disrespected. It was about him standing up for himself when nobody else in that studio would. And Jennifer? She'll have to figure out if this is who she wants to be. The host who tears people down? The person who values controversy over connection? Because if it is, she's going to find herself doing a lot more interviews alone. Nobody wants to sit across from someone who sees them as a target instead of a guest. Denzel showed us all something important that day. He showed us that success doesn't mean you have to accept mistreatment, that being gracious doesn't mean being a doormat, that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply walk away. And Jennifer showed us something too. She showed us what happens when ego writes checks that talent can't cash, when entitlement replaces empathy, when a platform becomes a weapon instead of a bridge. So there you have it. The full story of what happened when one of Hollywood's most beloved actors finally said enough. When he decided his self-respect was more important than finishing an interview. When he reminded everyone watching that some lines shouldn't be crossed, no matter who you are or what show you're hosting. This is the kind of behavior we need to call out. This is the kind of entitlement that has no place in our industry. Jennifer Hudson thought she could get away with it because she's famous, because she has a show, because she thought Denzel would just take it. She thought wrong, and now the whole world knows it.